Audi, Jupiter, et tu Iane Quirine, dique omnes caelestes, vosque terrestres, vosque inferni, audite. The power of Rome was brought to pass through its legions. Their secret, discipline, and training. As they proceed to conquer and subdue the known world, legions optimize their structure, system, organization.
Legio XX!
Legio XX!
Legio XX!
Legio XX!
Legio XX!
Legio XX!
Urbani, fervate, uxores!
Urbani, fervate, uxores!
Urbani, fervate!
Passo! Roma, Invicta!
Roma Invicta!
Roma, Invicta!
Roma Invicta!
Passo!
Legio XX!
Legio XX!
Legio XX!
Legio XX!
Urbani, fervate, uxores!
Urbani, fervate, uxores!
Urbani, servate, uxores!
Urbani, fervate, uxores!
Umaducimus!
Calvum abducimus!
Moecum, calvum abducimus!
Moegum, calvum abducimus!
Roma, Invicta!
Roma Invicta!
Roma, Invicta!
Roma Invicta!
Now, I've already made a detailed video on the human condition of the march for the Roman soldiers. You will find a link in the description below, and I highly suggest you to check it out. But on this video, I'd like to focus on one thing. We often consider just the idea of the legionaries marched from Italy to Gaul, and we sort of teleport ourselves directly into their destination without considering how difficult and tiring of a task it would be to actually walk with all the equipment and all the things that they had to carry from one place to the other. And yet the Roman soldiers were professionals. They would have been incredibly fit because of all the walking that they would do. And also keep in mind that their life was very different to that of modern day men. They didn't really stay on a couch watching Netflix for many hours. All they did was always walking. Everything was physical to them. So for them, although it must have been incredibly tough, that was their life. But the question is, did they have any sort of chants? Did they chant in Latin like we see in the Ben-Hur representation of a Roman legion marching? Well, if you are interested in this, you want to know more about Roman chants, well, this video is actually a collaboration with another channel, a very, very good channel that I strongly suggest you to check out, and the name of the channel is Invicta. If you want to know more about these Roman chants and what we know about them, then definitely check out Invicta channel's video on it, and say hello from the Metatron's community of noble ones.
Dollite!
The Testudo is one of the most famous tactical formations used by the Roman soldiers. The way you do it is that you form a compact body in the center, and then the legionaries raise their shields over their heads. As Theo says, you form a compact body in the center and raise their shields over the heads of all the others, so that nothing but shields can be seen in every part of the phalanx alike, and all the men, by the density of the formation, are under shelter from missiles. Indeed, it is so marvellously strong that men can walk upon it, and whenever they come to a narrow ravine, even horses and vehicles can be driven over it. Then Plutarch describes the way Mark Antony was using the Testudo during his invasion of Persia in 36 BC. The men behind them held their shields over the heads of the first rank, while the third rank did the same for the second rank. The resulting shape, which is a remarkable sight, looks very like a roof, and is the surest protection against arrows, which just glance off it. So the Testudo was a tactical formation that was used to protect soldiers from all types of missiles. So you don't have to just imagine protecting them from arrows. Of course, that would probably be the most common situation, but other missiles too. It could be rocks, it could be stones, slingshots, anything you can throw at them, well, it would protect you from it. But one thing is important to say is that the Testudo could also be used for hand-to-hand combat. Although, because of its density, the men found it harder to fight in hand-to-hand combat, but it was still possible to do it. So the Testudo is a very good defensive formation, but one thing that is important to say is that it does sacrifice speed. The Testudo was not invincible. Cassius Dio tells us about an account of a Roman shield array being defeated by Persian cataphracts. But in general, whenever the Romans were doing siege warfare, or when the Romans were fighting against opponents that were relying on missile weapons more than usual, or whenever even in other tactical situations on the battlefield, the Testudo was one of the most effective formations that the Romans used, and it showed Roman military ingenuity. While expanding the territories of Rome, in order to keep the legions, the legionaries, safe while moving through hostile terrain, a legionary army built a fortified camp, and they would do this at the end of a day's march, every day. These camps, called CASTRUM, Castra for plural, were carefully planned and constructed by the soldiers. They were doing that following specific set patterns. The process of establishing a camp began while the army was still on the march. A survey unit of a tribune and several centurions went ahead to look for the right place. So what would the right place for a castrum look like? Well, it would have to be open and have enough space for a 700-meter square encampment. If located near an enemy, it was about 4 kilometers away from their position specifically, and it needed to have a water source opponents could not divert or foul up. For defensive purposes, it was built on a rising ground, in an area without cover for the enemy to use. If an enemy were nearby, troops were set to keep guard and defend the camp. In camp for the night, the soldiers carried out the tasks common to any army on the march. So they would cook, eat, clean, maintain their equipment, possibly entertain themselves, and slept. How did guarding and patrolling work? Many patrols and other duties to fulfill. It was a very busy life, that of a military camp, even if we're talking about a camp built only for one night. While in camp, guards were set in various places. Some guarded the commander's tent and kept the area around it in order. Then you also had guards protecting the horses and the supplies. You also had general guard patrols, watching for any approaching enemies or trouble within the camp. Each unit also set its own sentries. Guard patrols would then in the morning give their reports of anything they had seen in the night. Then a strong cavalry patrol was sent out to scout the surrounding area and establish what an enemy was doing. All of this intelligence that would be gathered through the patrols would then allow the commander to call a council of war with his officers. This is where they would seek advice and choose what to do, when to engage the enemy, where, or whether it was the case to keep marching or whether it was the case to stay still. Then a second horn blast and it was time to pack up camp. So constant training was what made the Roman soldiers professionals and effective, deadly war machines. They were able to understand commands, they were very prepared, very well prepared, they knew a whole lots of different formations. And what we know about these Roman formations is not only did the Roman army have several possible combat formations to use, depending on the terrain, depending on weather conditions, depending on the enemies that they were fighting, whether they had numerical superiority or not, etc., trying to exploit specific characteristics. But we also know that sometimes the Romans copied the opponent's formations and used them in later battles. For example, how Scipio Africanus did at the Battle of Zama, where he copied some of Hannibal's previously used formations. So again, the Roman army, yes, they had many different types of formations that they could use, and the soldiers were trained to execute those formations with surgical precision, but they were still a very adaptable force, ready to change, imitate, and use the strategies, armament, and equipment of the opponents against them.
Intente! Scuda, portate! Scuda, tollite! Iovi optimo maximo! Legionari, move! 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. On! Scuda, tollite! Formazione, due linee! Boom! Legionari, move! 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. On!
Alright noble ones, well I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron. And remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.